So a small intro about NLG. So the Networking and Learning Group was founded in 2019, December. And since then, we have been hosting sessions. Earlier, it was in person, and now we do it online after COVID. It has been founded by Jason Abraham. He's the storyteller, speaker, networking expert. He does amazing story interviews with knowing the success stories of each and every individual he has interviewed with them. He's a Canva specialist. He's avid listener and on a mission to connect with 100,000 souls before end of this year. Amazing personality. Thank you, Jason, for being here. And the another co-founder is myself, Sushma Priju. I'm an HR professional, NLG master practitioner, and I'm passionate about human resources. I love how people react, how people think, how we deal with people as a human and create impact and unleash the potential within each of us as we have a lot within ourselves. Who are the pillars of NLG? The work we all do, you see on the screen, there is a back-end work required. So we have two of our gentlemen. One is Takyudin Teparambil. He's a QHSE professional. He's himself an entrepreneurship enthusiast. He has started something at his own as well. He's MBA in HR and MSc in biotechnology. Anil Kunaku is HR professional, NLP master practitioner. He's a coach, mentor, Toastmaster. He shares AK thoughts in our groups, which you have seen every day. He's a career coach as well. Currently associated with Singapore-based university to mentor the students. So that's all about NLG team. And why is NLG formed is to network, learn, and share knowledge with each other. Now, what all we have learned throughout our journey is not to be kept with us within ourselves, right? It needs to be shared. So that's where we have formed this group, and this platform is available if you want to share something, if you want to reach out to people, if you want to share experiences, then please let us know and you will be the speaker here in no time. We have two main parts of our group, which is NLG League, which is all about learning and sharing with each other. NLG Careers is about the job vacancies, the ideas, the queries, if you have any on any of your career side. So these two groups are available. We'll be sharing the links shortly in the chat box. You can join us there as well. We are available on various social media platforms, Facebook, WhatsApp, Telegram, and LinkedIn. Do join us again and share with your family members and people who can benefit. Few rules to be followed is please mute your mic so that speaker and audience both are not disturbed. You can use comments, chat box, query for your questions or for any reaction buttons if you would like to say. You may raise your hand if you have any queries because speaker will be speaking about the topic and at the end we'll have Q&A. You may also take notes or screenshots as you like. These are some of the sessions we had held earlier. So earlier we have finished 49 sessions and today is the 50th, which is a half century. And I'm glad that we have amazing speaker today on our 50th episode. Who is Patrick Noel Delhi? He's a founder and CEO of Icon Global Innovations. He's a seasoned international entrepreneur and businessman. He has founded, structured, scaled, and restructured multiple startups over 20 years. So he has 20 plus years of experience. He was awarded as the Young Entrepreneur of the Year in 2000. He has worked in severe roles as senior professional in large multinational companies. Therefore, he knows the buying and selling process within the companies of all sizes. He can advise and support on all aspects, concepts, products, marketing, sales, funding, scaling, exit, etc. And he also helps startups to navigate the maze and win. So without much ado, please welcome Patrick. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So a good day, everybody. It's good morning for me. It's the middle of the night, so I'm going to stay on audio if that's okay. Don't look too good at this time of the night, so video is cut off. But it's good to be here today, and thank you for the invitation. I'm very, let's say, traditional when it comes to presentations. So I just talk. I don't have slideshows. I don't have anything to attach to present. I very much give my kind of like story about entrepreneurship. And it's an interesting story in the sense that I think entrepreneurship as a career option is something that should be developed. And I'm working at the moment, just to give a quick kind of intro on my current project, to build entrepreneurship academies. And what I want to do is create a situation where people, systems, governments, and agencies recognize entrepreneurship as a way to go when you are looking to start up in the earlier years, or when you're in college or university, and you think, okay, I'm getting this university degree. Do I want to go to a stereotypical job, or do I want to look at ways to take that education, take that knowledge that I'm picking up, and press the entrepreneurship button and go into a role or a career as an entrepreneur? When I started out, entrepreneurship was looked on as kind of a sales job. You know, we were trying to sell something. We were always classified as, okay, you know, there's a product, there's maybe an idea, but then entrepreneurship was always considered as an extremely tough role. And don't get me wrong here, it is a tough role, but it's also a very rewarding role in the sense of explaining what you want to get out to the world. It's not about selling, it's about developing. It's about taking your idea and making it a reality. To give a little bit of background from me, I started out first when I was 14 years old. My parents said to me, you know, okay, you have all of these ideas, you have all of this energy. What are you going to do with it? And I said, well, I'm going to go and make some money from it. I'm going to go and make a business from it. So I was on my summer holiday. And we lived, I'm originally from Ireland. I was born and raised in Ireland. And we lived down by the beach in Ireland. So summer came around, and we got I had 2.5 months off. So I said, well, what am I going to do? And I started selling burgers and fries in a food van by the beach. And it worked really, really well. And that was my first, let's say, entry into entrepreneurship. I learned a lot because at 14 years of age, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I had to learn very quickly. But what I did learn was customer service. And what I learned was dealing with people and understanding how people buy and understanding how I should sell. And that brought me through my summer time. I did, thankfully, it did really well. And I went back into school, and then I came to 17 and I said, okay, where do I go next? I want to see parts of the world. And I got to 18 and I decided I was going to go to Germany, and I lived in Germany for 2 years. So I kept building businesses. When I got a few years later, I developed a search engine business, and it went well. And then I went into medical and healthcare, and all of those businesses over that 20-year period have given me an education that I couldn't have got inside of a college or university. And the life education that goes with entrepreneurship is really interesting. I've had very good successes. I've also had very good lessons along the way. And I call them lessons because some people call them, let's say, they put a tag like a failure or it didn't work out. I really don't use the word failure. And failure is like a negative. You know, you have to think about it and say, okay, I failed. And there's a stigma attached to failure. That shouldn't be the case in my view. I wrote a book last year and it's called Just Startup, a guide to building startups. And in that book, I said, a failure, or what is typically known as a failure, should be classified as a try again moment. You learn from it. You take away what you have learned and you put it in a chapter and you understand it, and then you say, okay, next time I won't make those mistakes. For me as well, I've had the benefit of working in big companies, so I know what it's like to be in the large company mentality. When a startup or when an entrepreneur comes in and they're trying to sell their service or their business or their product. And it's a really rewarding career when you get into it and when you get the foundations right. But I think the most important part and the biggest piece of advice that I give to anybody is to get your roadmap correct. Look at what you want to do. And by that, I mean, everyone gets ideas every day. Everyone has an idea for a business. We walk around and we think of something suddenly and we go, hey, if I did that, would it be a potential business? Many people leave it aside because they're just afraid of the entrepreneurship bit. And they're saying, okay, if I try this, do I risk everything? Is the risk too great? Should I take a chance? And all of these things combine to make you think twice. And sometimes it's better just to think once, but to make out a map, and just say, if I have this product or if I have this service, write it down and do a check on it yourself, first of all.
Patrick, we don't hear you. Jason, are you able to hear?
Are we okay?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. I don't know how much you've heard. So have you heard me so far or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I was talking about like ideas, and the first part of any business and the first part of entrepreneurship is the idea. And when you get the idea, it's important to write it down. It's important to take the idea and write it down. Because everybody gets ideas every day, and they just seem to, and this is me as well. The habit that I've picked up and the process that I've picked up over the years is when I get an idea for a business or a product, I write it down and I look at it and I say, okay, a day from now, a week from now, 2 weeks from now, does it still make sense? Because if I think of this great idea, many of these great ideas can become businesses, but some of them may not. And the key factor is putting it into a form or putting it into a format that you can look at and then say, where do I need to take it from here? What's the next step? For me, when I come up with these ideas, I look at two things: the market potential and the idea difficulty. So I'll probably look at the idea difficulty first, and I'll say, is it possible for me to develop that product or service relatively easily? Because the fact is, when you're in a startup, when you're looking at entrepreneurship, you really have to have a roadmap. You really have to have an idea of where it needs to go. Otherwise, you can maybe go into an incubator or accelerator and you can spin some wheels for a while, but still not get the product to the market. For me, I take a different approach. I look at it and say, if I didn't have the incubator or the accelerator, how long would it take for me to get this idea to the market? Because speed is everything in a startup. You got to move quickly. If you go to a 12-month startup or a 12-month incubator or a 6-month incubator even, somebody else may come in from left or right field and be in the market before you. So you have to move quickly. And by doing the roadmap, you assess where you're going. Now you can do that individually, but the next step is to go to somebody that's experienced, or go to an agency, or go to a service that is already in place to help startups. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm building these entrepreneurship academies. And what they're designed to do and what they're structured to do is to give the entrepreneur with the idea the ability to look at it critically, not negatively, critically, and look at assess the idea and say, does this have the potential to be a business? Does this have the potential to either be a lifestyle business where the entrepreneur does very well, or does it have the potential to be the next Google or next Facebook or next Apple? And all these assessments are necessary when you're looking at a business in the first place. So ideas can be golden nuggets, or they can be something that is an idea which is a stepping stone to your next big idea. And assessing the value of the idea is really, really important. The last thing you want to do is create a situation where you're in a negative mode and the idea doesn't work or won't work, because that will, that will deflate your enthusiasm and make you feel like, okay, it didn't work the first time, so I shouldn't try it again. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to give entrepreneurs the ability to have a very clear assessment on how entrepreneurship or how their idea works. That's the first part. There are many steps after that to bring it to fruition and bring it to a business. But I think overall, the overarching comment that I would make is about entrepreneurship as a career option. It's a great place to be when things go well. And I want to be clear, when things are not going well, it's a tough life. It's a tough road to take. It's a tough role to have. Because you have to rely on your own internal resource of energy, enthusiasm, intellect, all of those factors that you need to make things happen. And ultimately, what we have to do as entrepreneurs is we have to convince other people that what we're selling and what we're providing is of benefit to them, is of advantage to them. It provides them with a solution. And so there are many ways to approach that. I think the most basic and fundamental route to take is to look at the idea, and as I said a little bit earlier, look at the market, look at what you've got to offer. Are there competing products out there? If there are competing products out there, what you need to do is look at the relative strength of your offering versus the other products that are out there. And then why would somebody give you their hard-earned money for your product or service? What's the logic? Put yourself in the customer's shoes and say, if I was going to buy this, how much would I pay? Why would I pay it? And what do I expect for my money? And it really comes down to that very basic function. I think the other factor, and this is important, you have to make a decision whether it's going to be a lifestyle business, whether it's going to pay just your salary, or whether you're going to build it up into something that is bigger, something that is a business that can have multiple people working with you and where you can take it out to the world. And the third factor is you need to look at all of the support services that are around right now. I think the startup ecosystem is as good as it's ever been. And if there are options available for you to get support, you should knock on every door. You should ask all of the questions before you launch. Try and keep your product and your service under, let's say, within your own zone before you launch, because when you put that product out on the market, all of your competitors can see it. So before you go out, have yourself well prepared, have yourself well structured, know what you need to do, make out your roadmap, believe in your product, and don't be scared of sales. You know, many people are like well qualified and they think, I'm not a salesperson. Oh my God, I can't do this. You know, but the fact is, everybody's a salesperson. We wake up in the morning, when we open our eyes, and well, not like me now because it's the middle of the night, but when we wake up, we are continuously selling. You know, it's to our parents, to our partners, to everyone around us. We are trying to impress upon them that what we want is what we want. So don't think I don't have sales experience. The fundamental point around this is, if you believe in your product or service and you believe that it's of value, you can sell. Because what you will do is you will have told yourself internally, I believe in this. And your enthusiasm and your commitment and your eyes will tell the story, will convince people that this is a good place to be. The second part of that is the competition. Know your competition. Sometimes when I launch products, at the moment, I have 4 businesses in development. You might think that's super difficult. Yes, it is. It takes a lot of my time, but I've been able to set up systems around the world that I have many people to help me to get these things off the ground. But the first call I will make to anybody to help me to do that is the sales call. I have to convince them that what I'm doing is worthwhile, is something that is of benefit to me, to society, to them. And once I do that, it's good. So do not be afraid of the sales part of the business. And I have like seen that so many times. I mentor businesses as well and entrepreneurs. And the first question I get asked in many cases is, okay, I believe I have this great idea for a product. I believe I have this great product, but I'm just not a salesperson. You don't have to be a, let's say, stereotypical qualified salesperson. Just believe in yourself, believe in the product, believe and know your market. If you put yourself in the mindset of this. If you have, let's say, imagine that you're standing in front of like 200, 300, 1,000 people, and they have the option to ask you questions about your product or service. You must be able to answer those. If you're not able to answer those for yourself before you launch, then that leaves you open to not getting the sale. And don't worry about the words that you use when you're trying to sell. Just be yourself, be who you are, believe in your product, have the passion and the drive and the energy behind that product. Because many, many times we as human beings will look at a product and it might not be the most intelligent decision to buy something, but we'll buy it. The reason we'll buy it is we trust the product, we trust the brand, and we trust that the company behind it is telling me the right story or giving me the right information. For you as an entrepreneur, if you're coming from a zero start and if you don't have the idea yet, I think the most important thing is always catch your ideas, always hold your ideas. And when you hold your ideas and you look at them later and you look at them a few days away, a week away, 2 weeks away, and if they still make sense, run them by your local focus group, which can be family, friends, and just say, what do you think of this? And listen to them. You know, when I started out, I had the habit of coming up with an idea, and as a young entrepreneur, I was thinking, this is the best thing in the world. This is going to take over the world. You know, this is going to be the next big thing. And when I asked for opinions, I didn't really listen. You know, I kind of said, well, I'm so sure of this, I'm not listening to people across the table. And if the person across the table is saying, well, I'm not so sure if I would actually pay for that, I'm not so sure if I would actually buy that, take that on board, listen to it. I'm not saying they're right, but you do need to assess the validity of your idea before you waste your time and money on something that may or may not work. The second element of this is, or the third element, I guess, apart from mapping it out, is how are you going to get it to the market? Who do you need to help you? Who are your stakeholders? Do you need investment? Do you need seed capital? How do you get to a point where you say, I have a product? And when I say that you get to a point that I have a product, make sure your product works. Because your credibility will be damaged if it doesn't. And you go to the market and you will have something that is, let's say, 75% ready. You'll go to a seasoned buyer or a purchasing person for your product or service, and they will say, no, I'm not going to buy it. So you've put all that energy, you've put all that time into getting the product right. And the buyers will tell you immediately that it's wrong. What I've been doing and what I've done in the past with new ideas, and when I chose entrepreneurship initially as a career, I would always go to my expected target market and I would ask them on a, let's say, friendly basis, what do you think of this? You know, is this actually going to work? And don't do that with just one person. Try and pick out 2 or 3 people and tell them straight up, this is a kind of like a mini focus group. This is a mini assessment of my idea. And I want to understand if there are any cracks in the system, if there's any kind of gaps that I need to close. They will happily tell you. Because they'll admire the fact that you're coming to them with your proposed product or service and that you're asking their opinion. And honestly, in the past, sometimes when it's worked like that, when I did go back and maybe finish what I was proposing to offer, they were probably my best customers. because I went back to them afterwards and I said, I've done what you suggested I would do. And they feel like they have some ownership then over the product or service because I've just gone and done what they told me to do. So all of these steps are necessary, and they're very much market driven. You look at the market. There's a saying that I heard some years ago, and this very experienced entrepreneur said to me, look for a gap in the market, but make sure there's a market in the gap. That you are actually going to a place that has the ability to give you sales, to give you commercial traction. Because the best ideas in the world can exist, but if they don't sell, they're not a business. And you only have a business when you have sales. Prior to getting sales, you have an idea. And I think getting ideas is good, but ideas by themselves do not absolutely turn into businesses because they don't make money. And fundamentally, when we're trying to, let's say, commercialize or structure or get value from our ideas, yes, we might get psychological value to say they're great ideas, but if they're not making sales, they're not a business. So all of those factors come into account, and you'll probably hear the overriding word from me, which is sales. The big advantage of nowadays is we have a global market. As I said, I'm originally from Ireland, but people say to me, where are you from? And I say, I'm from the globe. I've been traveling for 20 years. I've been all over the world. And I think markets are now connecting. COVID is helping that because everything's online. So if there's any silver lining on this cloud of COVID, it's the fact that the world is a very small place. And when you develop your product or service right now, think big, think about where I could take this. After going through the evaluation steps that I talked about, think about the global market. I always do. And people say to me, oh, you bite off more than you can chew, and you take on more than you're able to do. But really, ambition should never be criticized. Global thinking should never be pushed back. We should always think about, start locally, but think globally. And fundamentally, I think if you do that, by starting locally, you validate your product, you validate your service, you validate your market. And then you think globally. You say, okay, on second stage, if I get this to a point of traction locally, where do I go next? And what is my next market? The amount of effort that goes into building a business and building a product or service is pretty heavy. There's a lot of time and effort involved. For me, when I'm into these things, when I start a new product or a new idea, it does not go off my radar. It's always on, and you must have that commitment. It's 7 days. And I think if you are not 100% committed, it's going to be more difficult. The way to share that is to get a co-founder, go into collaboration or partnership with somebody else who is of like mind, who likes where you're going or has skills that you don't have. And I think the co-founding bit is important, particularly if it's a tangible product. You're going to need to have skills that maybe you don't have. I always do a kind of a skills assessment, even on myself. And when I come up with a product or an idea, I will say, do I know all about the technical, the scientific, the marketing part, the sales part, the expansion part, the scale out part? Do I have all of these? If I don't, I'll find somebody who can complement my skills. And the part that I like most is the innovation part, looking at new ideas, looking at ways of, and the marketing and sales part. I'm okay with that. The engineering part I've learned over the years, and I'm not a qualified engineer, but I can sit with engineers and we can talk right down to molecular detail on the products that I come in, because I will have trained and taught myself before I'll go to them what I need to know. The internet is an amazing place from the point of view of information gathering. So pull in all of the information that you can. absorb it, understand where you want to go, understand the technology that you want to sell, or understand the service that you want to provide. And then finally, when all of that assessment is done, I call that kind of like a feasibility study. You look at that feasibility, then you look at viability. The viability part is about the numbers. The best products in the world can be maybe the best products in the world, but they won't sell unless you have the viability part right. I'll give you an example. When I started out, I had this great product idea, and it was going to go into the healthcare space, actually. And everybody that I spoke with in the first stages said, this is a super idea. This is going to be really, really good. And then I did a viability assessment, which was, what's the cost of making the product? What's the price that the market will pay? And then I look at all of the factors involved in that. And it just wasn't viable. It wasn't going to fly. It wasn't going to be a commercial success. I would have been working, but I would have been making no money. And I don't want to sound like I'm very commercially driven here, because I like to develop products that are good for people. I like to put products out there that have a beneficial function to humanity. But really, if you want to be in business, you have to think business, and you have to say, okay, is there a margin here? If there's no margin, then you're working for free. You're working for a very limited income. And if that's what you want to do, fine, but everybody needs to make an income. Everybody needs to live. The next really big element for me is choosing your markets carefully. And I think that's both geographical and also, let's say, technical. I've seen products launched into a certain market segment and just didn't fit, in that segment. What I do when I start out is I look at 3 segments. There's segment A, which is our primary segment. And then there's secondary and third segment, which is your safety net. When you launch that product into segment A, if it doesn't go that well, then you have segment B and segment C to fall back on. And that kind of risk management is necessary as well. And you probably gather from the overriding kind of summary that I'm making here, it's all about risk management. Entrepreneurship is about taking the right risks. The typical way entrepreneurship is presented is, oh, we're risk takers, and we'll just go out there and we'll bet the farm, as it were, as they say. I don't know of any entrepreneur that bets the entire, puts all of his or her chips on the table, puts all of his or her money on one product idea. That's not a wise thing to do. You should always have a safety net. You should always say, if I'm actually going to put my life, energy, and motivation and money and time into this, is it worthwhile? Secondly, what is my safety net? With the Entrepreneurship Academies right now that I'm building, I want to create a link between between an idea for a business, whether they're studying in university or whether they are sitting at home and they have this idea. They should be able to come to an Entrepreneurship Academy, and they should be able to study very quickly, not a 12-month program, whether their idea has validity and whether it's commercially and technically feasible and viable. And then at that stage, the next step for us is we have a venture capital fund attached to that. And we will say to the promoters or the entrepreneurs, okay, we've evaluated your idea. We've listened to what you have to say. Here's our guidance, and here's our, let's say, support. And now let's give it a go. Let's see how it goes. And then we put in seed capital to the ideas that qualify. And the entrepreneur tries this. If it works, great. They have a business going forward and they can scale up that business. And if it doesn't, and if we all get it wrong, no fault. You've tried, go back to proposing to getting what I call a stereotypical job, but at least you've tried. And I think I know the stat is 22.5 percent of businesses fail in the first year. In year one, they fail. I believe that global systems, it's not just the entrepreneur that is at fault here. I think global systems are very much driven towards year 2, year 3, year 4. But the year 1 part is the risk part, is where all of the risk exists. And I want to fill that space. And right now, it's not our entrepreneurship academies are not ready. But the only advice that I can give to somebody is try it out without causing too much risk for yourself, your family, your surroundings, and get as much support as is possible. There are many agencies out there right now that can help you out globally. You know, there are people that are agencies, and like I said, incubators, accelerators. All of these agencies and all of these entities are there to help you out. But make sure before you go to them that you have your own understanding validated and present it to them and go from there. I can say, and I think I said this at the beginning, entrepreneurship as a career option is a great place to be overall. I like it. I do have to, you will put in many, many hours. You will put in much, much effort. But when you get a success, and when you close a contract, or when you build your business, or when your sales are lifting, or when you're putting a team in place and everybody's on the same page, pointing the same direction, looking for the same goal, the satisfaction factor is unparalleled. It's not anything like being in that, let's say, 9-to-5 job. And when I was in the 9-to-5 jobs, because that's how I started out, well, apart from, let's say, from 21 years old up to 25, 26, I was in the 9-to-5 job. It was nice to have the support of people around me. It was nice to have the resources to develop the products and the markets that we wanted. But I still didn't feel like I was being fed. You know, from a psychological perspective, I felt like I had more. I felt like I wanted to contribute more. So in that time frame, I was doing a business and marketing degree by night. I was working by day, and I said, I've got 2 hours, 2.5 hours in the middle. So I set up a search engine business, and that filled the gap, and that fed my brain, you know, that fed my mentality. Because I think if you are of an entrepreneurial nature, and if you are entrepreneurial, please don't waste it, you know, use it. I think everybody has an entrepreneurial, let's say, motivation. We all want to make change in our lives. We all want to do better. And don't be scared of it. You know, don't think that it's going to, cause, you know, cause you to run out of money or things like that. Just put in all of the safety nets that you need to make it like initially more like a hobby, more like look at it and say, okay, I keep my baseline income, because at that time I kept my job, but I had the business on top. So my safety net was the job. And then I could play with the idea of starting a business, and I could test the idea of starting a business. I think on the opposite end of that scale, I've seen, and I've when I mentor entrepreneurs now, the enthusiasm is great to see, but you have to have enthusiasm with reality. You go and you test your idea, and you want to go out there and you want to tell the world. I've seen people just give up their jobs or give up their income and throw everything into this idea or service, and that usually does not work out well. And you will hear of the, you know, superstar entrepreneurs who are billionaires, and they'll say, okay, well, I started with zero. And that might be the case in some cases. It depends on the product and the market. But I think ultimately, if you want to have a successful business, but also a relatively happy life, you need to have safety nets. And when you put in your safety nets, you have the baseline, and then you play with your ideas. You put the ideas out there, you test the ideas, you develop them up, And don't be afraid to think big. Don't be afraid to think I need investment at some stage. Don't be afraid to say, okay, if I take this with like, X amount of money, a small amount of money, that it will be okay. Think about bringing on investors from a very early stage. I remember when I was traveling around over the last 2 years, a guy came to me and he said, I won't give you the specifics of the product or the detail, but he said, I'm going to make this product and I'm going to take on the big guys in this market. So my question was, so how much do you have in your investment pot? If you're going to take on big giant companies, then they have multi-billions on their balance sheet. So how are you going to win as a startup? And he said, I'm going to do A, B, and C with the product, and I'm going to remortgage my home, and I'm going to put that money into this business. And I said, please rethink this situation, because when you remortgage your home is at risk. And I said, the amount of money that you're going to put into this product it's lunch money for the big companies. They won't even, it'll dissolve in front of your eyes. So he said, well, what would you do? I said, I would license your idea to the big companies. I would get it to a point where you have intellectual property, put some patents or put some intellectual property protection around the idea. And when it's ready to disclose, you go to the big companies and say, well, here's my idea. Here's what I've got to offer. Would you like to license this from me? And 2, 3, 4, 5% of something is better than 100% of nothing, So it's better to collaborate sometimes than to try and compete, because these companies are around for a very long time, and they have a lot of money to spend on sales and marketing. And as a startup, you have to have some distinction. You have to have something that's unique. And typically what you have is 2 things: intellectual property, or you have speed. You are the speedboat when they're the super tanker. And being able to move fast is a big advantage. Just make sure you're moving in the right direction. Make sure that what you're doing is valid. Make sure that if they assess what you are doing in the market, that you can withstand and you can stand up to competition. A big factor in your roadmap for your product is going to be competition. Know where you fit, and make sure you have the typical marketing text would say USP. I say DSP. It's very difficult to get a U, which is unique. If you look in the patent offices around the world, there are very few unique inventions. There are very few unique products that you can stand alone and say, this is completely unique. The DSP part for me is a different selling point. So you're coming in and you're saying, I've got this product because it's different to the other products that are out there. And that DSP factor is a good mindset, I think, to have. Because if you convince yourself that you're unique, usually a seasoned buyer or purchasing person in any company, anywhere, who's going to be your customer is going to go, well, that's not unique because somebody else was in here a day ago or a week ago and they have something similar to you. So like, what's different about yours is the typical response that you'll get. And this is part of the mapping situation that I'm talking about. Really be very realistic with yourself. Be enthusiastic, be driven, but be very realistic. And look at it and be your own worst critic when you're looking at these roadmaps. Just say, if I was in that customer's position, would I pay this amount of money for that product or service? And be honest, because if you are honest with yourself, your chances of success are much, much higher. Don't get over enthusiastic with the potential of the product just purely as a product or a service. The excitement of the product or service that can overtake your logic. Put logic into the equation. Try and step out of your own mindset and go into the customer's mindset and say, would I pay for this? Would I pay that amount of money? If not, why not? Who am I competing with? What are the relative positions? Where do I sit on the competitive scale? Literally write down on paper where you sit relative to your competition. And I know we're in an IT world and everything is like typed on, but I literally just sit there and I just write on a page, where do I sit in the overall market? And why would people pay money for my product or service? Would they pay money for my product or service? When I've satisfied myself, then you can go to an individual buyer, or you can go to an individual target customer. Or if you have the funds and if you have the money, get like 7, 8, 10 people around the table and put your product or service in front of them, give them a presentation and listen, listen to what they have to say. When I started out, I was so enthusiastic. I was this young entrepreneur that had, well, thankfully I still have the energy, but I had massive energy that time. But I would just override their comments because I was so enthusiastic about my product. I felt, hey, it's going to work anyway. And if somebody said, well, I don't think that's actually so, it's not super good, I would kind of like I would gloss over that. I would kind of say, well, I believe in my product anyway. But you really need to listen when people are telling you something about your product or service, and if it's a valid comment, take it on board. If you can, get a friend of yours or get somebody that you trust to act as a moderator or a mediator in the focus group, because the entrepreneur will always try, and this is a good thing, by the way. We always try, and we're passionate about our ideas. We're convinced, but it's always good to have somebody that's a filter in the middle, to kind of say, hold on a second, if you tweak it a little bit, and if you move left, little bit right, then maybe it's going to be more successful. So put somebody that you trust, that is not going to be steamrolled by you with your idea, that they can say in the middle, hey, listen, they said A, B, and C. If you don't do A, B, and C, you're not going to be so successful. It's not going to be such a success. So listen to what people are saying. Again, when I started out, I had like a lot of plates spinning, as they say. I was always super busy, and I still am. But now when I walk into meetings, I listen to what people are saying to me. But when I started out, I would go in and I wanted to download what was on my mind, and then very quickly get a snapshot of what other people were saying to me, and then run away again. I was too busy. And you can miss so much information by not listening. I put a post on LinkedIn about maybe 3 or 4 days ago, and I said, listening is the most powerful form of communication. And the reason for that was the lessons that I've learned in the past. When you don't listen properly to a customer, I'll give you an example. When I started out first in sales, I was so passionate about my idea and so driven about my idea. Yeah, sales were kind of a natural to me. But I remember saying I designed a product, and the purpose of the product was I saw my own young son going to school, and he had this like backpack with heavy books in the bag, and he was kind of hunched over forward. And I said, that's going to damage his spine, and I said, is that heavy? And he said, I tested the weight of the bag. It was super heavy. So I designed a backpack that would like counterbalance the weight for him to carry, and it sold really well afterwards. But when I was explaining that, and I went to somebody who was a really seasoned and really experienced salesperson, and I asked her to just listen to my pitch. And so she sat down and I gave the pitch, and she couldn't get a word in, because I just wanted to tell her about the product, features, benefits. This is what it is. This is what it is. And she said to me after like 15 minutes of me just not letting her respond, she said, can you come with me next week? I'm going to a sales meeting, and I'd like you to come along and just watch and listen. And I said, okay, I'll do that. She went to that sales meeting, and for about 90% of the entire meeting, which was maybe about 45 minutes, she listened. She asked key questions. She didn't speak about her product or what she was trying to sell. She listened. And then at the end of it, when the customer saw that she gave him such respect by listening, she just said, the only sales line in that meeting was, When she was getting up to walk away, she said, so when you get a moment, you might send me that purchase order later today or tomorrow when you get some time. And he said, of course. So that was sale closed. And she didn't have to do any talking. She did listening. So fundamentally, when you have that product, ask people who know the market, ask people who know the product, and listen. Take it back, put it down on whatever you want. Just take notes of it and assess then where you need to go. That's the product specific part. Let me finish off by saying entrepreneurship and the lifestyle. If you're really in to some product or business that you have to scale up, like I said, it's the best place in the world when things are going well. But you have to know before you start out. You have to have your family, your friends, and every support structure around you tuned in and with you, because it's a lonely place in the beginning. You're the only person typically that has to sell this. You're the only person that has to go with this. So you have to make your statement to all of your stakeholders, all of your, you could probably call them shareholders, because they are your shareholders from the very beginning. You might actually need their investment and their money to help you to get off the ground. So you need to have everyone that's in your ecosystem, your family, to know about what you're doing, to understand. And it'll also help you on another front. It'll practice your pitch. If you go to each one of those people at the very beginning and say, this is what I'm intending to do, this is what I plan to do, and make it so, don't make it like a kind of casual conversation. Give them the presentation, hear what they have to say, hear what they feed back to you. And when you get your immediate group of people, your immediate family, friends around you, bought into what you're doing, their support is going to be necessary for two reasons. If it's a success, you're going to need them anyway. If it's not a success, you're definitely going to need them, because you're going to need to come back to them and you're going to say, I tried my best, it didn't work out. These are the reasons. These are the lessons I take from it. This is my kind of like debrief. This is my way of rationalizing the information. And if you do try and if it doesn't work out, please don't fall down over it. Like I said, manage your risk at the very beginning. Put in your safety nets. Put in your ecosystem that protects you. And don't, to use the analogy, don't bet the farm. Don't bet everything. Put some effort, energy, time, investment into it to get it to a point of validity. When you have validity, then you can go to external people to help you to take it up. We're going to do it, and I'm going to set up these entrepreneurship academies to help that process. And that's probably going to take another 6 months for me to get out on the market. So you're getting a preview of what I'm doing today. And that's just a part of my activity. For me, I probably do 3 days executive development of my businesses. 1 day I provide as mentor, advisor. I help startups free of charge. This is me giving back. And the other part then is looking at the bigger picture entrepreneurship. How do we make entrepreneurship a recognized, respected profession, as a profession, not just a sales job, as a profession, because it is the most multifaceted job in the world. You will get to do everything in a day. You will get to do product, marketing, financial, sales, everything in a day. And I've done a business degree. The business degree was great from the point of view of understanding the language associated with getting the product out, but a business degree will not prepare you for the reality of being out on the market. That's when the game begins, when you stand on the market. And I liken this, and I compare this to a kind of sport. You are going into the game, and you need to know where your strengths are. You need to know who are your competitors. You need to know how to play. You need to know what the rules of the game are. You need to know where the goal is. And all of these things are critical in achieving success. I've had a very good career. I love doing what I'm doing. I have much more runway left, and I'm just beginning this phase. And I like now to give back. I like to talk as I'm doing tonight. And people say you're up at 4 a.m. to give a presentation. That's really not unusual for me, in the sense that when you're an entrepreneur, your clock is always on. You know, there is no break. You're, even when you pretend you're off and you're on holiday, your mind is always thinking about the product and the idea and the business. It never shuts down. That's not a bad thing. But I would say, if you get into entrepreneurship as a career option, always look after your health. Look after your mental and physical health. Because if you're playing sports, you're out there and you have to be fit. You have to be able to win. If you're in business, and if you're in entrepreneurship particularly, where you don't have a big business around you, that's a demanding place. So make sure you're mentally and physically well, and keep a smile on your face. This is the engine that makes you go, makes you drive. I get up in the morning and I start each day with a smile. You know, I think, what have I got today? What are the good things that I've got? It's easy for life to come in, and it's easy for negativity to come in and shut you down. But negativity is a temporary phenomenon if positivity overtakes. So start with positivity. I'm not saying to be silly about it. You know, don't look at reality. You know, keep one foot in reality, but at the same time, think positively. Positive mental attitude will overcome a lot. I have had hits over the years. I've had hard lessons. I've suffered the pain of seeing how things don't go well, despite the fact that I've done everything possible. And this is the key part. If you go into a business and if you start as an entrepreneur, and you've done your absolute best, and if it's not going to work out, and if you can see the writing is there that this is not going to complete, this is not going to be a success, don't beat yourself up. You know, you've done your best. Take your lessons from it and start again. Try again if you can. If you cannot, and if it's too much risk, then go get what I call, again, the stereotypical job for a while. Give yourself a rest. Give yourself a break. And stabilize your ship. And if in a year or two after that, you want to get back into entrepreneurship again, then do that. But don't ever close the door on it. And I think finally, what I would say is, entrepreneurship is in everybody. We all have that wish to make or do something that changes what we do and potentially changes what the world does. Our product can be better than what's out there already. Keep that innovative mindset in life, and think innovation. Think, how can I improve? How can I do better? How can I make this product or service better for people? Think initially about other people. Think, what's my contribution to society? What's my contribution to humanity? Will what I'm doing give some benefit to another person? Invariably, and in almost all cases, if you think like that, when you giving generously will get the greatest return. And I say this again from learning, because when I started out, when I was a young entrepreneur, I would always think like the product and the commercial success. I wanted to have the Ferrari tomorrow. You know, I wanted to have the yacht and the big wins. But like, that's good. That's fine. Have that ambition. But I really think that the best mindset is to think, how can I contribute to society? How can I make the products that are out there right now better? How can I make the services that are out there right now better? And is my value and my core and my intellect and my drive going to allow me to achieve that? And if you can tick all of those boxes, as a final comment, entrepreneurship is a great career. So that's my presentation for today.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. Though you are in middle of the night there in Canada, you had given an hour of talk, which is so many points to take away, so many learning, so many insights. That's a great journey. What you have explained, your story, amazingly. Some very good points which I have noted down. There is so much, like, ask for opinions, look at the market, have your buddy to give a genuine feedback, listen and ask questions, be enthusiastic, be realistic, know your competitors, know your DSP. I have heard of USP, but DSP is new. So thank you for that concept as well. Roadmap, define your roadmap. Look at things like market. Is it possible to develop? How will it, who will pay for it, and what is there in them to pay? So many things. I can go on and on. So thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. The floor is open for any questions, any queries you have. Before we move to audience, Jason, over to you.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks again for the wonderful session. Just a quick question to start with. When we think about from the investor point of view, how important are exits and when to exit an investment?
That's a good question. And the fundamental point is, what's your business going to be? Is it going to be a lifestyle business, or is it going to be a build, scale, and exit business? Because some businesses are not suitable for exit. So you need to decide if you want to have a business that has like one, or maybe you as the only employee, and you make a nice income from it. That's a lifestyle business. If you're going to scale and exit, you need to think about that from the very seed idea, from the very beginning. You need to map it, and you need to say, okay, I need whatever it is. I need 100,000, or I need 20 million, to scale this up. And be realistic about your projection as well. So many startups that I've seen go in and over project. They kind of say, okay, I think I'm going to hit this sales figure, and the sales figure is completely impossible. You need to be realistic with your investors. You need to say to them, okay, this is what I think I can do. This is the best case scenario. This is the expected scenario, and this is the worst case scenario. In terms of investment, this is the amount that I think I need to get to the best case. This is the amount that I think I need to be in the expected, and this is the amount that I think I need if I'm in worst case. Never underfund your business. This is fundamentally important. I've done it. I know the pain, because what happens is, if you underfund it, you're going to be constantly running on empty. You're going to be constantly you're going to be managing your sales flow. You're going to be managing your costs too tightly. I'm not saying that you shouldn't manage your costs. You should, but you're always going to be running on empty. So I would say overfund instead of underfund. If your business needs $1 million, ask for 2 and try and get to 2. If you get to 2, you're in a much more comfortable position. You can do much more, because it's all relative. And when you do get funding, don't waste it. You're going to be in bootstrapping mode in the early stages, and you're going to be cutting costs. And then if you suddenly get a big check, it's not time to party. You have to be careful with your money. Think always startup. Think bootstrapping. Think cost control. You'll get much more value, because if you get, let's say for example, you have a startup and you get $1 million investment, you'll put that in, and if you're careful with that $1 million, you won't need another round. You'll get to profit making much more quickly by controlling your costs. So yeah, it's really important. Communication with your investors is very important as well. Tell them what's going on. Tell them where you're at. Good points and bad points. Don't be afraid to say you've had a bad week or a bad month. Give them a call and say, look, we expected to get this contract. It didn't come true. We're going to have to pivot. We're going to have to change. So does that answer your question, Jason?
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Patrick.
Ravi has a question. Ravi, please go ahead.
So, Patrick, what are the triggers we should know? Okay, this is the right time to exit from the business.
It's really difficult to say, Ravi, because if you have a business that let's say it's turned into profit, and you give, that probably typically takes, it depends on your business, there's no spectrum for this, but let's say it goes into profit and you're 2 years in, you're profit making, but you have the potential to make much more profit. An investor will look, or an acquirer will look at your business and say, what's the PE multiple, the price to earnings multiple? So let's say you're making, I don't know, I'm just going to pick a figure here now. Let's say you're making 100,000 net profit. They'll come in, and depending on the industry that you're in, they might say that your PE multiple, just again picking a figure out of the sky, might be 8. So they'll say your business is worth 800,000. But if you keep that business for another year, your profits could go up to 300,000. So your business could be worth 2.4 million. And you need to make a decision, make a call on what I see as the potential profits and the potential for the business itself. Also, exit is not absolutely necessary. If you have a cash generating business, and if it's going to continue building your net profit, then your exit today could be equated or could be matched in 2 years or 3 years. So you might decide to keep the business for like as long as is necessary. Do be careful with that one though, because every business has a finite life. You know, every product has a finite life. So at some point you'll reach your maximum valuation. And to be honest, it's all about judgment. You know, looking at your market, looking at where it's going, looking at where you fit in the market, looking at your competition and saying, okay, if I keep this for another 5 years, will I continue to lift these profits up? If you ever get the feeling that you're coming to maximum profit capacity, then maybe that's the time to sell. And by that, let me put numbers on that again using the 100,000 scale. Let's say you're making 100,000 net profits right now. Next year you make 200,000. The year after you make 300,000. You bring it up to 5, 6, 700,000, but you don't think that you can get that net profit figure to go any higher. That's the time to start looking around. But I prefer, instead of putting your business out there as with a for sale sign on it, wait for your competitors or wait for your acquirers to come to you. You can put the word out there, but don't put it up on the shop window, because then that devalues your company to some extent. Just stay steady in that and wait for the market to come to you. If your business is valuable to a very large potential acquirer, they'll want to bring it in anyway. So just hang in there and wait for them to come around, while at the same time putting, let's say, subtle words out there that you might sell. So you're not putting it on the shop window, but you're telling the market that you might be interested in receiving offers.
Thanks, Patrick.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yes, I don't see any questions further. No raising hand, no messages. Is everyone clear about entrepreneurship? Shall we close this session?
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick.
Not at all. It was a pleasure. And I didn't realize I talked for an hour actually. So that's, I hope I didn't take too much time.
No problem. It's your morning routine now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's, I think it's time for coffee now. I'll probably stay awake at this stage.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you, Patrick. It was great learning. Thank you for sharing your information, your story.
It was a
It
pleasure.
has given so much of insights. Yes, we'll connect offline as well.
Very good. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, audience, for being here and joining. And just a small bouquet for you, Patrick, virtually, because we cannot meet currently. So it's a virtual bouquet. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your time.
Many thanks.
Thank you for sharing the insights.
I appreciate that. And keep networking, keep learning.
Sure.
And thank you very much. Yeah, we'll connect offline. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.